years ago, my life split into before and after. Before, I was a devoted husband, a present father, and a man who truly believed that commitment still meant something in this world. After, I became a ghost in my own story. My name is Connor Whitman. I'm 45, a mechanical engineer by trade, a dad to an incredible young man named Owen, and, at the time, married to a woman I believed was my soulmate. Her name is Diana. If you saw her, you'd think she was perfect, charming, sharp-witted, the kind of woman who could walk into any room and own it without raising her voice. But behind that smile was a secret life. It began unraveling one Sunday afternoon. I remember it like someone branded it into the inside of my skull. Owen was at a friend's birthday party. Diana was meeting a client. She worked in luxury real estate, and I had just finished fixing the garage door. I went inside to grab a beer and heard her iPad ping with a message. It was synced to her phone, which wasn't unusual. We had no secrets, at least, I thought so. What I read wasn't just betrayal. It was annihilation. Last night was incredible. I can still taste you. He doesn't suspect a thing, does he? Winky face. The sender's name? Caleb. Caleb Darnell. My childhood best friend. My best man. Owen's godfather. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I didn't even cry. I just read. Message after message. Photos. Plans. Secrets. It had been going on for over a year. Weekend getaways disguised as business trips. Lunches she claimed were open houses. Birthdays she forgot to celebrate. All of it. Scripted lies delivered with a straight face. When she came home that evening, I played along. Kissed her cheek. Asked how the client was. She smiled and said, demanding but rich. Might close next week. I nodded, walked into the kitchen, and started writing my exit strategy. But I didn't want to destroy Owen's world overnight. So I waited. Planned. Documented. I hired a private investigator, collected evidence, and quietly moved my savings to a secure personal account. I even started therapy without telling anyone, just to stay grounded while my world burned. Then came the breaking point. 3 months later, during what I thought was a normal dinner, Diana casually said she wanted to explore a more open-minded relationship model. Her exact words were, I think we've grown into different people, and I'd like to try something new, together or apart. Maybe a trial separation would help us discover who we are. That wasn't a request. It was a soft launch into singlehood, with Caleb in the wings, waiting. I told her I'd think about it, then left the next morning before she woke up. No note. No forwarding address. Just gone. I disappeared from her life. I left the house to her. Gave Owen the choice of who to stay with. He chose her, and I didn't fight it. He was 17. Almost a man. I gave him space, and we kept minimal contact, birthday calls, the occasional email. But Diana? Not a word. Not until graduation day. And that's where this story really begins. Because when I walked into that auditorium 4 years later, older, calmer, rebuilt, Diana turned around and saw me standing at the back. And in that split second, her face changed forever. The ceremony was already halfway through when I stepped into the auditorium. I kept to the back, wearing a navy suit she'd never seen before, my beard slightly longer than it used to be. I looked like someone she wouldn't immediately recognize, which is exactly what I wanted. But it only took a moment. She was sitting in the third row, right side, 2 seats from the aisle, legs crossed neatly in that same polished way she always had. Her phone rested in her lap. She was looking toward the stage with that performative pride she used to practice in the mirror. Caleb was next to her. Older. Bloated. Balding. That was my replacement? I took a seat near the aisle and watched silently. It wasn't until Owen's name was called that she turned. Maybe she heard someone shift. Maybe it was instinct. But her eyes locked on mine mid-applause, and in that instant, her entire face collapsed. Not physically, but emotionally. She froze, the corners of her mouth twitching in a way that betrayed her panic. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, maybe even mouth my name, but no sound came. Her eyes flickered, confusion, guilt, fear, and something else, regret. Caleb noticed. He turned too. His expression twisted into a grimace. Not surprise, alarm. Like he just saw a ghost walk into his kingdom. But I didn't flinch. I nodded once at Diana, never breaking eye contact. Then I turned to the stage and clapped for my son like nothing had happened. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. I didn't move. I didn't try to get closer. I just sat with quiet resolve, letting her mind race. That was my moment. She didn't own the narrative anymore. I did. After the ceremony, as families swarmed the lobby, I waited near the exit. Owen had seen me earlier and grinned like a kid again. He'd grown taller, more confident. I hadn't been able to be there daily, but I'd sent letters, supported him silently, encouraged him when I could. He knew I was still his father, still steady, even from the distance Diana enforced. He walked up and pulled me into a hug before I could speak. "You came," he said into my shoulder. I nodded and said, "Would have crawled through fire to be here." And then she appeared behind him. Diana. For the first time in 4 years, she was standing in front of me, unsure of herself. She clutched her designer bag like it was a shield. Her eyes were glassy but defiant. Her voice, however, cracked as she spoke. "Connor," she breathed. "I didn't think you'd show up." I tilted my head. "And Mrs. Graduation? You still don't know me at all, do you?" There was a pause. Caleb lingered a few steps behind her, pretending to look at his phone, but I knew he was listening. I didn't acknowledge him. I didn't have to. Diana reached for words, like someone drowning. "I'm glad you came. Owen, he really missed you." I kept my tone neutral. He never stopped being my son. Her lower lip trembled slightly. She looked like she wanted to say more, maybe even apologize. But I wasn't there for closure. I was there for my son. And whatever grief she felt now was hers to carry. Before she could find her courage, Owen grabbed my arm. "Dad, let's go take a picture outside. You've got to meet my girlfriend too." As we walked off, I turned just slightly and said without malice, "It didn't have to be this way, Diana. But you made sure it was." And then I left her standing there, surrounded by happy families, proud couples, and graduates, alone with the truth that no mask could hide anymore. She could pretend for Caleb. She could pretend for the crowd. But the way she looked at me, that was real. That was unfiltered horror. Because she knew something I hadn't said out loud yet. I had come back not to rekindle, but to finish what she started. After we left the crowd behind, Owen took me out to a small garden behind the auditorium. He had always loved being near trees, and it was almost poetic how he seemed most grounded when surrounded by nature. There was a little bench next to a flower bed where we sat down. He leaned back, exhaled, and looked over at me with a soft, almost vulnerable smile I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "You know," he said, "she didn't expect you to come. She told me that even if you did, you'd probably just watch from the shadows and leave." I smiled faintly. "That was the plan." He chuckled. "But you didn't." "No," I said, I steady. "Because today wasn't about her." He nodded. There was a long pause. The kind of silence that doesn't feel heavy, just full. Then he glanced at me again. "There's a lot I want to ask you. About everything. But I figured I'd let you decide when you were ready." I looked away, then back. "You have questions, Owen. Ask them." He hesitated, then asked quietly, "Why did you really leave?" I took a long breath. The wind stirred the leaves behind us like a whisper. "Because the woman I trusted most destroyed everything we built, and she did it with someone I once called my brother." His face tightened. Not with shock, he already knew. "I figured," he muttered. I tilted my head. "How long?" He looked down. "Senior year." I found a message on her tablet when she asked me to help set up her email. It was between her and Caleb. My stomach dropped. "You knew for 2 years?" "I didn't know what to do," he said, voice cracking. "I was 17. I didn't want to lose both my parents. I thought maybe if I didn't say anything, it would fix itself. But then you left, and she told everyone you abandoned us. She made you the villain." I swallowed hard. The weight of his confession hit me like a truck. "I'm sorry, son. You never should have carried that alone." He looked at me, and for a second I saw all the years he spent feeling torn, lied to, and unsure which parent to trust. But he reached over and put his hand on my shoulder. "You're here now. That's all I care about." The rest of the day passed in fragments. We took photos with his girlfriend, laughed about college stories, and caught up like no time had passed. But as the sun began to set, Owen asked the one question I knew was coming. "Are you going to see her again?" I shook my head. "Only if she comes to me. And even then, it won't be for the reason she hopes." He raised a brow. "You think she still hopes?" "She never lost her need to control the narrative," I said. And today I shattered it. Later that night, I checked into a small boutique hotel outside town. I had no plans of returning to my old house or making any kind of grand confrontation. That chapter was dead. I wasn't chasing revenge. I wasn't that man anymore. But the universe has a funny way of tying loose ends when you least expect it. Because at 10:37 p.m., there was a knock on my hotel door. I opened it slowly, and there she was. Diana. No makeup. No jewelry. Hair tied back. Her usual armor was gone. She looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. Her eyes searched mine like she was hoping to find the man she threw away. But I wasn't him anymore. And I think she realized that before she even said a word. I shouldn't be here, she began, but I didn't know where else to go. I said nothing. Just stepped aside and let her walk in. She stood in the middle of the room for a moment like she didn't know how to exist outside her illusion of control. Then she turned to me and asked the question I'd been waiting to hear for 4 long years. Why didn't you ever come back? I met her eyes. Calm. Cold. Honest. Because you never once tried to stop me from leaving. And in that instant, I saw it. The regret. The realization. The horror. Everything she buried for 4 years erupted in her expression. She had been hoping I'd crumble. That I'd crawl back. That I'd be the broken one. But now, standing in front of me in a quiet hotel room, she understood the truth. She hadn't lost me when I walked out. She lost me the moment she chose Caleb. She stood there in silence for nearly a full minute, like her brain was trying to reboot. Like hearing those words hit her harder than she ever imagined. She expected me to rage. To collapse. Maybe to fall into some bittersweet memory and ask her why. But I didn't. I just said the truth, and it hit like a brick through glass. I watched her lower herself onto the edge of the couch slowly, as if the weight of her own choices was finally becoming real. She rested her hands in her lap, fingers twitching, eyes scanning the floor as though it held the answers to questions she hadn't dared ask in years. Then finally, she looked at me, not with anger or pride, but with something that almost resembled humility. I was scared, she said, barely a whisper. I didn't reply. I don't even know why I did it. At first, it was harmless. Caleb was just a friend. He listened when you were working long hours. He made me feel like I mattered again. I nodded slightly. So, sleeping with him was about validation? Her eyes watered. I never meant for it to go that far. Then why did it continue for over a year? Silence. She had no answer. And the absence of one was louder than anything she could have said. I sat across from her and folded my hands together. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand apologies. I wasn't interested in watching her beg. What I wanted, what I needed, was clarity. You know, I said calmly, you didn't just betray me. You broke something in Owen too. She flinched. He doesn't know. Oh, he knows. He found the messages. And then he had to live in that house, pretending not to. Diana's entire face crumpled. Oh my God. Yeah, I nodded. He didn't tell me until today. He carried your lie like a cross on his back, trying to protect both of us. She covered her mouth, visibly shaking now. I thought I was doing what was right for him. No, I said sharply, you were doing what was easiest for you. That's when she finally cried. Not a few graceful tears. It was full on, shoulders shaking, soul-crushing sobs. She bent forward and tried to hold herself together, but the truth was too heavy, and I wasn't going to help her carry it. I didn't enjoy watching her fall apart, but I also didn't feel guilty for it. She had constructed a fantasy around herself for years, and now it was cracking. I thought you'd hate me, she said through tears. I did, I answered. For a long time. But eventually, I realized I was more angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. She wiped her eyes. So, what happens now? I leaned back in the chair. Nothing. I've already moved on. Her head snapped up. You're seeing someone? No. I mean, I've moved on from needing you to answer for what you did. I found peace in walking away. You never tried to stop me. And that was all the answer I needed. She went quiet again. I could see the wheels spinning in her head. The realization that she had truly lost me not when she cheated, but when she said nothing as I walked out that door. For her, I was a backup plan. A fallback. Maybe she thought I'd return when her new fantasy fell apart. But I didn't. I rebuilt my life without her. And now she was standing in the ashes of her choices, realizing that the man she had once taken for granted was gone for good. Then she tried something I didn't expect. Connor. I know I don't deserve anything, but I want to try and be part of your life again. As a friend, at least. For Owen's sake. I looked at her, letting that sink in. And then I told her something she clearly hadn't anticipated. I know about the pregnancy. Her breath caught. Eyes widened. The blood drained from her face in an instant. What? She stammered. You were pregnant with Caleb's child, I said. You miscarried. That's why you disappeared for a week and claimed you were at a wellness retreat. She looked like she'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't want to tell you because I knew it would destroy you, she whispered. I stared her down. It didn't destroy me, Diana. It woke me up. She looked away, her lips trembling again. I buried that part of my life because I was ashamed, she said. And you should be. Not because you got pregnant, but because you used Owen as a shield. You wanted to keep your life intact without ever facing what you did. You lied to me. Lied to our son. Lied to yourself. She took a shaky breath. I thought maybe, if enough time passed. I interrupted, that I'd forget? That I'd come back. She nodded slightly. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the quiet parking lot, headlights in the distance casting shadows across the curtains. You need to tell Owen everything, I said. Not just about me. About all of it. You owe him the truth. And if I do? I turned back to her. Then maybe, for his sake, you'll have a chance at being in his life. But you and I? This is the last time we'll ever have a conversation like this. She stared at me, frozen in place, and said nothing more. Because she knew it was over. This time for real. I didn't ask her to leave. I didn't throw her out. I didn't need to. After I said those final words, the weight of them filled the room so heavily that even breathing felt unnatural. Diana sat there, hollowed out, like she had finally understood what she had done, not just to me, but to herself. To Owen. To the life she had once sworn to build with me. Slowly, she rose to her feet. She clutched the strap of her bag so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She opened her mouth once as if to say something, maybe to plead, maybe to scream, maybe to apologize, but in the end, she said nothing at all. She just walked out the door without even looking back. I stood there for a long while after she left, staring at the closed door, feeling an odd mix of emotions, sorrow, anger, and yet, relief. A chapter that had haunted me for 4 long years was finally over. And not with a bang, not with a dramatic scene. It ended quietly, like a candle snuffed out by the wind. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and met Owen for breakfast at a small diner near campus. It was one of those old places with cracked leather booths and syrup bottles that never seemed to get cleaned properly, but the pancakes were legendary. Owen slid into the booth across from me, wearing a cap backward and a tired, but genuine smile. "How was your night?" he asked, stirring his coffee. I paused, considering whether to tell him everything. Then I decided he deserved the truth. "Your mother came to see me," I said. His eyebrows lifted. "What did she want?" I sighed. "Closure, I guess. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe a piece of the man she remembered, or thought she remembered." "And?" he pressed. "I gave her none of it," I said simply. "I told her the truth. That there's no going back." Owen nodded slowly, sipping his coffee. He wasn't surprised. I realized then just how much he had grown up while I was gone. Life had forced him to. We talked for hours about his plans, his future, what he wanted to build. He told me he wanted to leave the city, maybe move west, start fresh somewhere new. And I told him I would support whatever path he chose. There was an unspoken understanding between us now, no more lies, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Just honesty, even when it hurt. Just as we were finishing up breakfast, Owen's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, sighed, and set it face down. "Let me guess," I said. "Your mother." He nodded. "She's been texting since last night. Apologizing. Asking to meet. Asking if we can be a family again." I stared into my coffee for a moment. "And what do you want?" He shrugged, looking older than his years. "I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive her. Part of me can't even look at her the same way anymore." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. "You don't owe anyone forgiveness, Owen. It's a gift, not an obligation. You forgive for yourself, not for them. And if you're not ready, or if you never are, that's okay." He nodded, absorbing that. He needed to hear it from someone who understood. Someone who had lived it. As we left the diner, stepping out into the bright, chilly morning, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. Not happiness, exactly, but something better. Freedom. And just when I thought the final page had turned, life decided to throw one more twist into the story. Because as I walked Owen to his car, a familiar vehicle pulled into the parking lot, a sleek, black SUV. The door opened, and out stepped Caleb. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. Owen stiffened beside me. Caleb looked different, older, worn down, like life hadn't been as kind to him as he hoped it would be. He walked toward us slowly, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, voice low. I heard you were back. And I thought, maybe we could talk." Owen glanced at me, waiting for my reaction. I smiled. Not warmly. Not angrily. Just amused. "There's nothing left to talk about, Caleb," I said. He shifted uncomfortably. "Connor, I messed up. I know that. I live with it every day. That's between you and your conscience, I said. Not me. He swallowed hard. I thought maybe you should know. Things with Diana didn't work out. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Color me shocked. He grimaced. She cheated on me too. The irony was almost too perfect. Owen snorted under his breath, and I couldn't help but let out a dry chuckle. Well, I said, clapping him once on the shoulder as I passed, you got exactly what you deserved. And with that, Owen and I left him standing there, alone in a parking lot full of strangers, looking smaller than I ever remembered him being. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't vindication. It was simply justice, the natural kind, the kind life delivers when you least expect it. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some endings are better when you leave them exactly where they belong, in the past. The drive away from that parking lot was strangely quiet. Owen fiddled with the radio for a second, then just turned it off altogether. I think both of us realized that some moments don't need a soundtrack, they just need to exist as they are. As the city skyline disappeared in the rearview mirror, I glanced over at my son and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Peace. Not full happiness, not yet, but the heavy chains he'd been dragging around his whole life were finally slipping away. We didn't speak much until we were almost at his apartment. As we pulled up, Owen turned to me. You know, he said carefully, I don't think she ever really loved Caleb. I think he was just easy. I looked at him, considering that. Maybe. But when you pick easy over right, you lose the right to complain about the consequences. He smiled sadly. Yeah, you're right. We sat there for a moment longer, neither wanting to break the strange bond that had formed between us over the past 24 hours. Then Owen reached over and hugged me tightly. I hugged him back, feeling pride swell so fiercely in my chest it almost hurt. I'm proud of you, I said into his shoulder. Thanks for coming back, he said quietly. After he went inside, I stayed parked there for a few more minutes, just breathing, just being. I should have driven straight to the airport and flown home, closed the book completely. But a small part of me, the part that hadn't quite finished healing yet, needed one more thing before I could move on. Closure. Not from Diana. Not from Caleb. From the lie itself. So I drove. Not to our old house, that was long gone, sold a year after I left, but to a small coffee shop Diana used to love. It sat right across from a park where we used to take Owen as a little boy. A place filled with good memories, untainted by betrayal. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the empty swings swaying gently in the breeze. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed love conquered all, that trust was unbreakable if you just gave enough, forgave enough. And I realized that man deserved better. Not just from Diana. From me. I owed it to myself to live better. To demand better. And just as I was finishing my coffee, fate decided to throw one final scene into my story. Because across the street, standing alone by the swings, was Diana. She wore jeans and a simple jacket, her hair pulled back, no makeup, just herself, stripped down to the core. She wasn't watching the swings. She was looking directly at me through the window. For a moment, neither of us moved. It was as if time itself had hit pause. 1,000 conversations, a million accusations, a lifetime of shared memories hung in the space between us. Finally, she crossed the street. I stayed seated. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She walked in, her hands trembling slightly as she approached my table. She didn't ask if she could sit. She didn't need to. She just stood there, eyes rimmed red from crying. I told him everything, she said, voice raw. I said nothing. I told Owen about the affair, about the pregnancy, about how I lied, about how I let you leave without a word because I was too much of a coward to fight for what mattered. Still, I stayed silent. She took a shaky breath. He said he needs time. Maybe, forever. I nodded once. That's his right. I just wanted you to know, she continued, voice breaking, that I ruined everything. And I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. But you deserve the truth. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman who had once been the center of my universe was now just a shadow. A lesson. A reminder of what happens when you choose selfishness over loyalty. You're right, I said. I did deserve the truth. For years ago. She flinched like I had slapped her. I know, she whispered. I stood up slowly, gathering my jacket. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I just leaned in slightly and said the last words I would ever say to her. Goodbye, Diana. For good this time. And then I walked out, leaving her standing there, broken and alone. As I crossed the street, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long golden rays across the park. I stopped for a moment and smiled, feeling the warmth on my face. I wasn't the same man who had walked away 4 years ago. I was stronger now, wiser, free. And for the first time in years, I realized something truly beautiful. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well without them. The flight home felt lighter than any journey I had taken in years. Not because of the physical distance from the city or the people I left behind, but because I was carrying less with me, less anger, less bitterness, less pain. Somewhere between standing in that parking lot and leaving Diana alone in that coffee shop, I had finally laid down the burdens I didn't realize I was still clutching. I stared out the window as the plane ascended into the clouds, and for once, I wasn't haunted by memories of her laughter or poisoned by visions of what could have been. The past wasn't my prison anymore. It was just the past. When I landed, I went straight to the modest house I had rented on the edge of town. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't grand, but it was mine. Every nail, every beam, every square inch of it was earned through my own work after I left everything behind. It symbolized something no betrayal could take from me, my ability to build a new life from the rubble. Waiting on the front porch was someone I hadn't seen in a long time. My neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, a woman in her 70s who treated everyone on the block like her grandchildren. She waved excitedly when she saw me and practically shoved a pie into my arms before I could say hello. "Welcome home, dear," she said brightly. "We missed you around here. It's been too quiet without your terrible lawn mowing." I laughed for the first time in days, a real laugh, not the hollow, polite kind I had gotten used to giving people. "Good to be back," I said. As I settled in, I found a letter wedged between the front door and the frame. It was from Owen, just a simple note scribbled in his rushed, messy handwriting. "Dad, thank you for coming back. Thank you for being the parent who stayed true, even from a distance. I'm proud to be your son." Oh, asterisk, asterisk. I sat down on the steps, the pie forgotten beside me, and read that letter over and over until the ink practically burned into my memory. No apology from Diana, no regret from Caleb, could ever measure up to the value of that single, genuine message. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and cast the town in a soft golden glow, I did something I hadn't done in years. I cooked dinner, not the rushed, bachelor-style dinners I had survived on, but a real meal. Steak, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. I put on some music, poured myself a glass of good bourbon, and sat down at the table alone. And it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Somewhere during the meal, my phone buzzed. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But curiosity got the better of me. It was an email from an old college friend I hadn't heard from in over a decade. He had seen a photo Owen posted, a shot of us at the graduation, standing side by side, and recognized me immediately. He said he was hosting a reunion of sorts, a gathering of people who had scattered to the winds over the years but still remembered where they came from. At first, I hesitated. The idea of reconnecting with people felt foreign, even exhausting. But then I realized maybe this was the universe offering me another door. Not to the past I had lost, but to a future still waiting to be built. I responded with a simple, "Count me in." The days that followed weren't cinematic. There were no epic twists, no dramatic monologues. Just simple, honest living. Fixing up the garden. Reading books I had abandoned on dusty shelves. Answering Owen's text about college choices. Slowly, quietly, healing. And then one night, sitting on the porch, I thought about her again. Not Diana the betrayer. Not Diana the liar. Just Diana, the flawed, human woman who made choices, terrible ones, and paid for them in ways she could never truly undo. I didn't forgive her to absolve her. I forgave her to free myself. I picked up my phone and typed a message I never intended to send, but needed to write. "I hope you find peace, Diana. Truly. But your story is no longer my burden to carry. Be well." I stared at it for a moment. Then I deleted it. Some things were better left unsaid. Some victories didn't need witnesses. As I set the phone down and leaned back to watch the stars, a thought hit me, simple but profound. I didn't survive what she did to me. I overcame it. And there's a world of difference between the two. Months passed. The seasons shifted slowly, summer turning to fall, fall surrendering to winter, and with each change, I found myself feeling a little stronger, a little more distant from the man who once measured his worth by the loyalty of others. Life became quieter, simpler. Some days were filled with warmth, dinners with old friends, long phone calls with Owen, small moments of laughter I never thought I'd hear again. Other days, they were heavier, lonelier. Because no matter how much healing you do, some wounds don't vanish, they simply stop bleeding. They become part of you. A scar you carry, invisible to everyone else but real enough to throb when the weather changes or the memories drift in uninvited. One night, I found myself digging through an old box I hadn't opened since the day I left. Inside were photos, faded snapshots of a different life. Owen as a little boy, covered in mud and smiling wide. Diana, standing in the kitchen of our first home, flower on her nose, laughing at something I must have said. Us at our wedding, young and foolish, believing love was enough to conquer anything. For a long time, I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by pieces of a life that no longer belonged to me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt it. All of it. The beauty, the betrayal, the loss. The knowledge that not every story has a neat, triumphant ending. Sometimes, you don't get revenge. You don't get a full circle moment. You just get a quiet kind of survival. You move forward because standing still hurts more. Later that evening, Owen called. His voice broke through the heavy silence like a beam of light. "Hey, Dad. Just wanted to check in. How's everything?" I smiled into the phone, even though he couldn't see it. "Good, buddy. Just taking it one day at a time." He hesitated for a moment. "You know, Mom's been trying to reach out to me more lately. It's weird. Feels like she's trying to fix things." "That's her journey," I said gently. "Not yours to fix." "Yeah," he said. "I know." There was another pause, then he added quietly, "I'm glad you came back into my life." I don't say it enough. "You don't have to," I replied. "I feel it every day." We talked a little longer, about college, about his plans, about nothing and everything. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring out the window into the dark, cold night. I realized that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing the people who hurt you or pretending the pain didn't happen. It means living with the truth and still choosing to build something beautiful on top of it. It means standing in the ruins of what you thought your life would be, picking up the broken pieces, and realizing, maybe you can still build something out of them. Not the life you planned, but maybe the life you need. The truth is, part of me will probably always wonder what could have been if things had been different. If Diana had fought for us. If Caleb had respected what we had. If I had seen the signs earlier. That part of me, the part that mourns the loss of a dream, will always exist quietly in the background. And maybe that's okay. Because some heartbreaks don't have happy endings. Some betrayals don't ever fully make sense. Some scars never completely fade. But that doesn't mean you can't find peace. It doesn't mean you can't smile again. It doesn't mean you're broken forever. As I turned off the lights and let the darkness fill the room, I whispered something into the stillness, not for Diana, not for Caleb, not even for Owen, but for myself. I made it. I'm still here. And for tonight, that was enough. Maybe tomorrow I would dream bigger. Maybe tomorrow I would feel lighter. Maybe tomorrow would finally belong to me. But for now, I let the sadness settle beside me like an old, familiar companion, not my enemy, not my master, just another part of the story I had survived. And with a tired but genuine smile, I closed my eyes, ready to face whatever came next.